Let's get started. I just want to welcome everybody to our sixth stock masterclass. We're very excited to have a busy lineup this morning. We're going to be kicking off with Yuval and Mike in a couple of moments, but just to give you an idea of the lineup, we're going to start with a really nice session from the front lines of CISO's perspective on cyber threats in the financial sector. And at 9:45 EDT, we'll have a session on cloud security and the modernization journey, followed by at 10:30, navigating in multi-cloud environments, how to maintain security operations while optimizing cloud costs. And the final session at 11:15 will be the Gen AI arms race, attackers and defenders. So we have a packed lineup today. Hope you can stay with us for the whole time. In case you do need to drop off, you can obviously rejoin us. You can also, we'll be sending everybody that registered links to the session on demand. So without any further details, I'll just say that we will be sharing updates and links and things on the chat. If you have any questions, please just submit them at any time, and we will try our best to get to them. Obviously, time allowing. So let me hand over to you, Yuval. Please make the introductions, and we can get started.
Thank you, Howard, and thank you for putting this wonderful SOC Masterclass, the sixth in a row. I think we have a very interesting lineup, and obviously starting with Mike Livni, it's an honor for us. So let's get to it immediately. Mike, again, thank you for joining. We know you have a very packed schedule as a CISO of a leading bank here in the US, but it will also be very interesting to hear your thoughts and experience about the trends in the market today. I will open, Mike, if you don't mind, with like a general framing to frame the discussion, and then we'll start picking you with some questions and get the discussion running. This is a very interesting time to have such a SOC masterclass, because we're seeing over the past year and a half increased trends in multiple layers. On the geopolitical side, the war with Ukraine, the summit that yields new alliances in the world. We're seeing the presidents of Russia and North Korea meeting shortly, next week or so. The tensions are growing, and the cyber risks that are derived from these tensions are also growing, and I'm sure that you experienced that as well. But it's not only the geopolitics, it's also the economics of things. The macroeconomic trends are still low. We're in a tough economic cycle, and it has direct impact on budgets. I mean, you run budgets and your peers are running budgets, and things are being consolidated, and also maybe even specifically in the financial industry that you're part of. These times economically leads to many opportunities also, right? M&As, etc. And your bank specifically, if I'm not mistaken, it's public knowledge, ran through a few M&As, will lead a few M&As. So that would expose business opportunities, but also cybersecurity risks, because you're integrating new entities, you're more exposed. And on top of that, and this is part of the headline of our SOC Masterclass, the generative AI revolution as the third trend that you need to work with. But these trends, I would say, put a tough framing for your day-to-day job and your strategy. But on the other hand, and this is where I'm getting to you personally, Mike, you have, I believe, almost 20 years of experience in leading the security side of Valley National Bank. So on one hand, you've seen everything. You've experienced cycles. You've built strategies. You adapted it to new technologies, new vendors that were not in place when you started your current role. So you're used to that. But on the other hand, it might be a cliche, but these times are maybe tougher than previous times. So you need to balance and find the right solutions. Why won't we start, Mike, after saying these big words, with learning a little bit about your experience and what you've been doing over the past 20 years, briefly?
Yep. So I'll give you history, but first, I want to agree with you. These times are very, very challenging. Not just, and you mentioned M&A, and we're going to get into that a little later as well, but with the challenging market for financials. And Excuse me, I'm a little under the weather, so my voice might be raspy at times. And you're looking at two sides of the coin, right? You're looking at smaller banks that may or may not be able to sustain the losses in their value of their stock, value of the company. It's a very negative environment for banking now, so very challenging. And then you have the other side where, and if you look at the paper, it's not a secret, we did, Valley National Bank did on Silicon Valley Bank. So the challenge of a CISO is right now we have about 5,000 employees. We would have had 11,000 overnight. We would have gone from a $65 billion company to a $130 billion company. So it would have been, a big challenge. So we need to prep for that. We need to, have the strategies in place to deal with things like that. And I'm going to take you back now on a journey to a much, much simpler time. I came to Valley about 25 years ago. I was in charge of technology. Now, when I sent my resume into Valley, I had to send it to valleyhr@aol.com. And somebody in HR actually dialed out in 1999 to get my resume from an AOL disk, because that's what they had. No internet, no external email. And I walked into an environment that had about 400 Novell servers, but not Novell 4.1, Novell 3.2. So if people here know what that is. That was an operating system that was deprecated 10 years before I got there. So we went through our first digital transformation that, I lived 2 minutes away, and I thought, hey, I had a 3-year-old daughter at the time, and I said, you know what? I'm going to come to work, and at 5:03, I'm going to be playing with my 3-year-old. Never happened. Within a year, we racked about, myself and a small team personally racked about 600 servers, Windows NT4 and Windows 2000, depending on what the applications ran. And we put this environment and transformed it, immediately put an internet, external mail, and wow, the company started exploding. At that time, we were about, I'd say, $8 billion and about 80 branches. Now we're about 250 branches, including many subsidiaries, some in Palo Alto, dear to your heart, and Chicago, mainly, New Jersey, New York, Florida, Alabama. So that's where we are today. In about 2002, so I was there a couple of years, and we did this big transformation. Just a few years before that, GLBA was, approved and issued by Congress. So then now you had a law that said you need to protect customer information, you need to have an information security program, you needed to, foresee threats, change your program if you see threats that you're not defended against and things like that. And the regulators came down very hard on mid-sized banks, especially because information security programs were inadequate. We were one of those banks. They said it's not strong enough. So we went through a transformation of that. And they said, well, so one CISO was appointed. He was here about a year and a few months. I was the network security architect appointed. They said, you put in all this stuff, you know how to secure it, let's do it. And at that time, it was very basic controls, IPS, IDS, spam filters, mail protection, gateways, and things like that. When he left, and we were able to resolve our issues with the regulators within a few months because I got trained. I had a very small team, but we were able to put everything. So about a year and a half later, almost 2 years, he left, and they said, "Oh, you're it." So this is the year 2004 now. So I've been in place at this bank as the CISO. It's going on 20 years. It's going to be 20 years in April. So
almost 20 years. Almost 20 years. So you've seen a lot of trends a lot of cycles economically, but also from a cyber landscape. If you can highlight a specific time, even an incident that would represent some of the challenges in your, it's not day to day because every possible attack is more than just a day work. Obviously, it is aligned with strategies that you put in place, the strategies that you will put in place as a lesson from what happened. Can you share some of that knowledge or experience?
Yeah, absolutely. So some of the major accomplishments are, what we started doing immediately is we started doing risk assessment of every application we had, every system we had. I got the data security team. At that point, all we were doing was controlling access. And now I had to put in a governance program, right? So I'll give you some of those successes and what they were and how early they were. So in 2004, I was confronted at the boardroom. And by the way, you're going to hear a transformation story because this program has evolved. I would say in its form today, it's probably the 5th iteration of the program. So every few years it iterates. And the reason is the threat landscape changes, right? You have different attacks, different vectors, it's a whole different ballgame. And you need to grow with that. You need to, learn from your peers. You need to be involved with very good partners, vendors. Like you might know one that's near and dear to your heart, like CyberProof, that helps you navigate that landscape and find every one of those challenges because they become very different. So my first few challenges were code review, right? We had one incident a couple of months after I started CISO, when we did our, so I'll give you examples, and this is relevant today too. So this is something that happens very often today. We had a web environment. We were taking loans on it, and they did some great jobs in the 90s to put together our informational website as well as some logic on it. We did the risk assessment. We saw there are no intrusion detection sensors or IPS sensors in that environment. It was outsourced to a third party. So big fight, got them in. Within a couple of hours, we see, and visibility is a very, very big part of your information security strategy always. It has been, and it should be today. So you have somebody launching a SQL injection attack from California, and then Russia, and then it's endless, right? Because there were no stored procedures, it was old code, it wasn't written well, and they harvested about 5,313 exactly, and that number is burned into my mind because I had dreams about it. Customers, their names, their socials, loan applicants, their salaries, their places of work, really, very damning confidential information. MPPI. So now I'm in incident response in a very juvenile time. So the incident
How do you contain? This is an event where you have 5,000 data points, very sensitive, and you need to contain that. This is a classic intrusion into the most sensible information within your company. What do you do once you hear about that?
So we disconnected from the internet for about a day and a half. I disabled all the functionality and took down the database and just left the static pages up. At that point, we started fixing everything. I had people coming in. I had a third party come in and opine on it. The time it was EY. And we fixed it within about a week. We had stored procedures and had a proper, defense against it. So, OWASP top 10 was a thing, and nobody followed it. So everybody was getting hit with it. If you go to the DBIR, people are still getting hit with it. So, people are still not defending against this stuff. The second thing we did was a few months later, it came out and it was just emerging technology at the time. There were only a couple of vendors that had WAFs, right? So you had Teros and that Continuum. Those were the two big players. unless you want to configure stuff yourself. And the way that came up is after that event, we started a secure coding program. The regulators saw what we did. They had me train all their examiners, and not only that, but help write some guidance around it at the OCC. So the OCC is our primary regulator. The result of it was that we went through every one of our vendors and applications and found which ones were coded properly and public facing and which ones were not. So we started with the public facing ones. One of them was a company that takes car loans online and then pushes it to the banks. It was one of those aggregators. And I talked to the CIO and he said, oh man, I have 53 SQL injection points and this and that. And he said, how are we going to use this, right? And I was in front of the board of directors with the executive vice president in charge of consumer lending. And the CEO was sitting there and he said, well, I said, if you do this, we're going to get our database scrape of our customers and we're going to go through this again. And he told me never to let it happen again. The other guy said, well, if we don't do this, we might as well exit the auto business, which contributed at that time about 15% to our bottom line, which is significant. So, what do you do in that situation? Here you are, security. And this is where the program changed the first time, and I'll explain how. And the program enabled the business. So rather than just practicing, old security measures where, you engineer it and everything else like that. So what happened was the CEO said, can you find a technology that would help us with this and still, help us go safely forward? So got together with my team. I have a great team. They've been with, some of them have been with me longer than I've been CISO. So I hired some of the team as the network security architect, and they're still with me today. That's how much we believe in our mission and our purpose, and they really enjoy it. They get trained. They've learned and grown with their jobs too. Sometimes the job outgrows you. I want to make sure that never happens to my team. So we went and we looked and we brought our first WAF into Valley, and we tested it and we threw some things at it, and we said, hey, we could put this between the SOAP operation of this online aggregator and our intake server, and actually look at everything, have it learn, and if it has an ampersand in there that's extra or different SQL statement, or because he had cross-site scripting vulnerabilities too, so like SSL defects and things like that, we kill the connection because we know that it's an attacker sending code through this aggregator. So I went back to the board and I said, hey, I think we found a solution. We tested it, it works. We're going to move the business forward. We're going to put these things in. And he said, well, how much did it cost? Because they thought this thing was going to be like millions of dollars. And I said, $50,000. And the CEO said, buy 4. So we did buy 4 for, fill over, one at DR, one in the production. But that kind of set the spark and changed our program. And we said, you know what? We're not going to just sit around and practice. And this was a long time ago, just older security measures like, blocking this or blocking that, or doing geolocation here with sidewinders. What we're going to do is we're going to partner with the business and move the business forward so that they can actually do things that are a little riskier and make a differentiator in the market, get time to market on certain applications and things.
Mike, I heard how you guys use that incident to, build new policies, get budgets, deploy or upgrade dramatically the program, the cyber defense program that you run, also to get your talent more seasoned, more experienced, more exposed to various strategies. So in a way, you use that as an opportunity. You didn't have a choice, rather. And also, I think awareness of the decision makers, the CEO and the board, etc., grew dramatically. Probably that was a turning event for your program. This is what I hear from the last few minutes of the description.
Yeah, and if you fast forward to today, things are different, right? So things evolve.
Mike, let me hold you for a second before we're moving the discussion to what's going on today. This is the reason we convened. I do want to run through Howard and team a short poll that will get the audience engaged and see what two polls in our session. So let's start. We welcome you, dear audience. We're seeing that the numbers are growing, so we're very happy that you're with us. We also have live stream audience, which is awesome. I'm not sure they can answer the poll, but that's fine. First question is, what do you think are the most pressing issues for security operations professionals today? You can pick more than one. The second question is, what are the top cyber threats in your organization in 2023? We will give the audience some time to respond, and then we can use the answers to the follow-up discussion. While the audience is taking notes and answering, I want to say, Mike, that what year? Can you share with us what year it happened? What you just described?
2005.
2005. Yeah, things were premature, and I think the incidents in those decades built new companies, security vendors. I mean, that would apply some of the gaps and challenges that I heard coming from a similar incident. Valley Bank was public these days.
Yes. Yep.
So there was a business impact. You related to that earlier, but we're here to support business. We're not here only for security for itself. And I do want to ask you, while the audience is filling the questions, what was the business impact on Valley Bank in 2005 incident that you just described?
So the business impact back then was, so it ended up in a couple of papers. We had very loyal customers, but still, it's very, very hard to tell what the damage is from reputational risk, and who won't come to your company because they heard that something happened there. But I think it had very little impact. It didn't have an impact on our stock. And you see it through the years, right? When Home Depot had their problem, TJ Maxx, whoever was public, you saw the stock dip for a little bit, but then, they recover very quickly. And that's if you handle the incident well, which brings you into incident response. Today, I think the major thing, so by the way, just to fast forward to today, that philosophy of moving the business forward and getting the business alignment and helping technology move very, very, very fast has evolved and changed tremendously with cloud, with fintechs that we deal with startups. You have to have a way of really accommodating that. And we built something, and I'm going to credit something to Ed Amoroso. He's the former CISO of AT&T, now has taught cybersecurity. Ed said that your applications should look like the bad guy's botnets, right? You should put a security wrapper around it, around all your workloads, throw them out there and make sure that, and it's a very, very good philosophy. And this is about a 5 to 6 year old philosophy. He and I ideated on this, and we actually put it into use and practice. So you have workloads that go into the cloud, and they cost you a lot of money once they spin up, and you realize that hybrid environment's best, right? So that you can see what the subscription costs are, and that workload may not belong in the cloud. It may belong on your on-prem, infrastructure. Once you find that out, it's very easy for IT to just, take that and move it internally. But all the security measures that you apply to it move with it is the question. Today, we have tools that do that. In the past, we didn't. We had to engineer everything. We want to take the engineering out of it. We want to take the complex security equation out of it, put the wrappers around the workloads, let them move wherever they need to, and you have a common security framework. That we found works very, very well. And that's what evolved from 2005 to 2023. We have a lot more tools out there. One of the tools we should really look at, and I just want to say this, once I have anyone's ear, I want to talk about it. But SAML and OAuth, I think, are at risk, and I think everybody should start looking at different authentication methods like FIDO and much stronger authentication methods. Right now, yeah.
Let me pause you for a second. I'd like to see the results. Howard, if you could change the results of the polls, and then we will use it. So the results are the following. What do you think are the most pressing issues for security operations professionals today? So lack of visibility, Mike, you mentioned the visibility is the most important thing. So 44% mentioned lack of visibility, too many false positive. Obviously, this is why we need security operations, 48%. Too many tools to manage. I'd like to hear you comment about that. And lack of measurability at 38%. It's always a problem. What? Let me ask you about, let's use this poll and ask you about tools. Today in these days, 2023, you run a much larger organization that you ran and budgets in a much dramatically bigger business than you joined, or even the 2005 incident. How do you deal with the amount of tools that you have and build the right strategy around it? I mean, the tools should serve the strategy should not work with the tools. So how do you approach that? What is your thought leadership take?
So, of course, you consolidate wherever you can, right? But people that I find security organizations, from small ones to big ones, tend to want to manage things themselves. And when you get into that trap, then you start buying, disparate tool sets. They don't work with each other, and you're better off. Things are commoditized these days. You're better off using a service as a commodity with a third party than trying to operationalize that stuff yourself, because then you get rid of number 1, 2, and 3, and 4, actually, right? So an organization that's trying to build things, and we've built things over the years, and some of them are monstrous and work for us, and some of us don't. But today, a lot of it is commoditized, and you need to let go of it sometimes. That's my answer to it, because there are certain things we operationalize in-house that are very, very successful, and there are some things that we looked at and said, wow, this is just not worth the effort, and we need to spin it off to somebody else that does this day in, day out, rather than build a team internally. And it's not only better for your bottom line and budgets, but it's also better for your actual success and security, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. You need, I guess, to balance between in-house development and outsourced partnerships as part of how you build a strategy. I think it's relevant also to how you manage the tools, how you run the operations, but also how you go forward with the strategy. What I think unique about the way you approach, Mike, from knowing you, is that you don't only make the decisions internally, you consult. You're part of the New York financial hub. You have many peers. You have a community of CISOs that you work with. You exchange knowledge so you can improve your strategies. We don't have much time,
it's been very helpful. I'll tell you a funny story about that. So one of our reps from next gen firewall manufacturer comes up to us, and he's like, I've been in a lot of security sales companies. He's like, I don't understand it. Every time you guys deploy something and actually buy it, there's a very, very, very large financial in New York that follows you by 6 months, and your portfolios look very similar. And I said, that's not, that's not a coincidence. We all talk to each other, and our teams all talk to each other and collab. And, we're like their testing ground, because we're in that sweet spot where we don't have that red tape or that huge environment where, we can make a much smaller commitment. But we're getting there. We're getting to that point. So, that's another turn of the security program where we put together a security strategy, and we call it our security hub, that surprises some fintechs that approach us and say, hey, we need you to, and part of the hub is, it's not just WAF or IP gateways or, tokenization, but they'll approach us and say, hey, we need to work on this tokenized data. We never want to see this. And these are the products that do it. We're like, no, it's already in our hub. Just connect and do it. And they're like, wow, you're the first mid-sized bank that actually, can accommodate us, like without installing something new or going to a new strategy or doing something different. So
yeah, the power of network in the sense you can improve the strategies and the tools that you use
Is it just
by
me
that, and I know that you're leveraging that on a day-to-day basis with your peers. We're nearing the end of our session, so I want to use it to, first of all, there is a great question coming from audience, and I want to use it to connect it to our days. Jason, a great professional that I work with, is asking, I would love to know how you're thinking about nation-state actors and specific APTs targeting the financial sector. So maybe, Mike, we can use that question to hear you in some final comments about today, with the background that I gave at the beginning of the opening statement. How do you see?
Well, I have to talk about yesterday too. So in the yesteryear, we used to get attacked by mostly Russian, well, whatever, Eastern Bloc.
There is a, I cannot hear you.
And at one point that shifted to nation state. And when it shifted, which was about 7 years ago, it rattled us. It really did, because the techniques were different. They were more targeted, they were stealthier and all that. So the things you have out there today are things like the bot, right? So they did a smash and grab of the move it zero-day vulnerability. Even for nation state actors, and then we saw like Raptor sniffing around our door, Helix Kitten, so like actors from countries in the Middle East, very sophisticated, from North Korea and China too, because, at the end of, for the last 4 years, APT, even one, has been trickling down their methodology to everybody else. So what I would say is, maintain your kill chains, practice cyber hygiene 101, because that's going to help you. Like in the QOP smash and grab for Move It and that vulnerability, I received 5 letters already, by the way. And it's mostly your third-party vendors, right? They they could have used, they might have been able to use whitelists. They might have been able to use tools that break SSL that are sophisticated in front of it. They might, I'm not saying in all instances that would have helped, but you need to think about those strategies so that those are the only things that will help you with, the APT actors, is keeping a very, very basic cyber hygiene 101 and then building your kill chain on top of it. And visibility is key, right? Visibility and defensibility are 2 different things. But, when you go into frameworks like Zero Trust, CIS, and all that, those are great. And those are your cyber hygiene. And this helps. And keeping all those frameworks up to date helps today. But you really need to go to the next level. You really need to have the person with eyes on glass that's going to see the needle in the haystack, and that's not easy to do.
Yeah, I know. Last question for you, Mike. We have in the audience cybersecurity operations professionals, I guess CISOs or people from CISOs teams. If you have one recommendation or a tip to give them within today's threat landscape, what would it be?
Look at your operations teams and practice your cyber hygiene 101. Look, if you have a Move It server and you need to put the elbow grease in, you really do sometimes. Automation isn't always the answer, in my opinion. If you put the elbow grease in and operate it just on whitelists, and sometimes that's not possible at all, right? Depending on your population and users and countries and geographics. But if you could put the elbow grease into it and talk to your security teams. I think you're better off listening to them. Listen to the people on the ground because they'll give you what you need to defend against this stuff. So if you're working just on whitelists, guess what? No one can get to your server. I'll give you an example. We have a limited server we operate, but we only have a few B2Bs and we only have a few customers that get to it. So it operates specifically on a whitelist. So, the threat footprint is about this big. So they said, do we need to patch it right away or can we wait till our normal cycle tomorrow night? I was comfortable saying wait for the normal cycle tomorrow night because the other controls layer on top of it. So you need to look at the kill chain. MITRE makes a big one. We use a different kill chain because we've been operating on one for 18 years. So we operate on the original kill chain. You can put the enhanced stack to look at your cyber defense, your actual program should every action that goes into that, whether it's recon, C2, exfil, you should map your entire risk framework to it and make sure that you have practical cyber defense.
Yeah, I've seen, while speaking with you, engaging with you, I've seen how methodologies and processes are key when it comes to security operations. I think this is one of the messages you're sending to the audience. Look, Mike, this has been wonderful. I know it's not the last time we're talking over. We started, I think, an in-person panel in a conference in New York. Now we're moving to virtual. I hope we will move to in-person soon as well. I want to thank you for your time. I know you're very busy given everything you just shared with us. And I look forward to our next fireside chat.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you. And it's always good to see our CyberProof partners.
Thank you. Howard, over to you.
Great. Many thanks for that. And we'll take a look at many of the questions actually that we didn't have time to answer, and see how we can turn some of those questions to answers in the near future. So once again, many thanks to Mike and Yuval.